Callum Schmidt, and I'm doing a presentation on the Chinese restaurant, which is an episode of Seinfeld. Seinfeld is one of the greatest television shows of all time. The show deals with the daily lives of comedian Jerry Seinfeld and his friends George Costanza, Elaine Benez, and Cosmo Kramer. The focal point of the show and the idea that the creators came to portray is that the show is mainly about nothing. Every episode, the characters do the same things that everyone else does: eat, hang out, and attempt to navigate the waters of modern society. In comparison to other television programs, this is the equivalent of nothing. This is nothing special. The epitome of this concept is shown in the episode The Chinese Restaurant, in which Jerry, Elaine, and George spend the entire episode in a single setting. In contrast, many television shows feature a story arc that takes place over multiple episodes, allowing the characters to grow, and other shows have weekly lessons that the characters learn. Seinfeld has neither of these elements. Instead, the show focuses on trivial, everyday situations, such as going to the laundromat or going to a restaurant. Author Jennifer Armstrong points out that many viewers stated, "You can't get too excited about going to the laundromat," regarding the pilot episode of the Seinfeld Chronicles, or Seinfeld, when the show first began to be aired. However, this criticism grew to become strength of the show. The comedy and entertainment comes not from the fact of going to the laundromat, but instead comes from the characters' interactions and reactions to the customs and manners of the act of going to the laundromat. The humor and theme of the show come from watching the characters go about their daily lives. We get to watch them do several things, such as sit, stand, and talk. And Albert Oster, writing for Television Quarterly, points out that Seinfeld dealt in such excruciating minutiae as getting a table in a Chinese restaurant, finding a parking space, or locating the perfect pieces of fruit. In the Chinese restaurant episode, we get to watch the characters. The characters' plan for the night is to have a night out and go to watch a movie. Before that, they wanted to get some food, and they decided to go to a Chinese restaurant. They're unable to get a seat, so most of the episode deals with us watching them sit and complain about not getting a seat, and sit and complain about being hungry or missing out on what else they're doing. The point of this episode, and much of Seinfeld in general, is that nothing can be something. Eric Bronson explains this in his essay, Making Something Out of Nothing. Nothing contains something of otherness, and according to this line of reasoning, something also contains an element of nothing. There's something in nothing, and nothing in something, even though Parmenides called this blurry mixing a sure sign of backward thinking. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I think it kind of helps us understand what Seinfeld is about. And in the episode, the trio are set upon a common goal to eat and watch the movie. Instead of this, they sit and wait while the world moves around them. If they had accomplished their goal, then something would have happened. However, they do not, and so nothing happens. One thing to note, however, is that the nothing being described inherently has something contained in its meaning. In this case, nothing is the act of them sitting in a Chinese restaurant. While this is technically an act, the act of waiting, in cultural and societal terms, they have accomplished nothing. Like I said before, in this episode, they're sitting, standing, and talking for the entire episode. This causes us to rethink our concept of what television is and what it should be. Because instead of us watching characters go about something and fight the bad guy or learn something about themselves, we just get to watch these people sit and complain. Eric Bronson continued this line of thought that something and nothing are intertwined by mentioning Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Bronson states that Taoists believe that nothing does make something happen. In fact, Taoist nothingness is said to have created everything in the world. This is an interesting thought when combined with Seinfeld. The show's creators champion the fact that nothing ever happens, when in accordance to Taoist philosophy, doing nothing is still doing something. Bronson makes that point here in this Buddhist story. There's a story in Zen Buddhist lore that exhibits quite succinctly the Taoist action by non-action. Once upon a time, there was a sword that was highly regarded by samurai warriors because of its blade, which could kill instantly. When placed in a river, the sword immediately severed all the leaves across its path. As the story goes, another swordsmith claimed to have an even stronger sword, though anyone could see the blade was not as sharp as the first sword. However, when this second sword was placed in the river, a funny thing happened. No leaf was severed because none dared cross its path. The second sword did nothing, and yet changed the natural course of leaves flowing down a river. By doing nothing, everything moved out of its way. In much the same way, the characters in Seinfeld, especially in this episode, the Chinese restaurant, changed many things by doing nothing. Out of their inaction, each character affected something off screen. Jerry is guilty about blowing off his uncle throughout the episode, and eventually, through the action of the maitre d', leaves to join his uncle. George is having girlfriend issues, and because of his inaction, loses her and leaves the restaurant flustered. Blaine is affected by the inaction of the group in deciding a place to eat, and eventually leaves the restaurant to eat somewhere else. So in effect, doing nothing is doing something, because inaction still creates unforeseen events. Even though the show is about nothing, it cannot avoid the inevitable something happening. The only reason Seinfeld was such a popular show was not because it was about nothing, as I've stated so many times. It's because it was hilarious. It was a funny show. If it were boring, it would nothing. No one would have watched it. And the show, much like Seinfeld himself, injects humor into daily occurrences. The show, however, accomplished this by making its characters go to outrageous lengths to appease their own selfishness and near sociopathic tendencies. Having these over-the-top characters sit and do nothing creates a crazy mixture that generally results in hilarity for the viewer and anguish for the characters. The most important episode to this element of the entire show, I think, is the Chinese restaurant. The concept of watching as nothing happens is a defining attribute to Seinfeld and to television. Seinfeld defined television for a decade and still influences television now. Isn't that something?
Callum, why do you think we tolerate that? I mean, even Jerry Seinfeld says he's just amazed that people wanted to watch it because there was nothing to it.
I mean, I think it was because, especially then, it was much different than what was on television. Especially, like, I remember 80s and 90s programs were a lot of detective and cop dramas. There was stuff like Knight Rider and then Magnum PI, and then in the 90s, I think there was, I'm not sure. But like, I didn't really live back then. But you know, as a sitcom, especially with other sitcoms, most of the characters always learned a lesson. So like, a lot of the sitcoms back then were like family sitcoms, like Cosby Show or like Family Matters or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. There was always a point to be learned and a lesson to be had. But in Seinfeld, there wasn't really. It was just about the point of the show was watching the characters.
Are there any shows today that you think take lessons from Seinfeld?
I think one of my favorite shows is Community. I think that follows a lot of points because a lot of the episodes a lot of the episodes are just silly and irreverent, you know? They like don't follow a set TV rule, if you know what I mean. And I would say some cartoons like Rick and Morty do this. There's probably some others.
So although you've said several times that this is nothing, what do you think is the something that we should be taking away from this and applying to our lives?
I think the something is I'd say the idea of the show. So I mean, like, even though it's about nothing or whatever, like, there's still, like, something happening, I guess. I'm not sure.
Callum, would you say that in light of what you just said a moment ago about there was a point to some of the sitcoms,
Yeah.
that's kind of unlike life, whereas watching Seinfeld is more like just the stream of consciousness of life. Yeah, they were each their own uniquely psychologically dented people, but it was just kind of like we just stepped in and watched them for 30 minutes and stepped away, and it's like there was no script to it. They just were living their lives. Is there something in us that kind of likes that?
Yeah, because I feel like if we stick to shows that are just about like learning lessons and stuff like that, it gets kind of ham-fisted and kind of cheesy, you know? Like, they can't make a great episode of like a great heartfelt episode every time. So I mean, like, if you just watch something like Seinfeld, it's just like, you get to just look at life in an absurd way, you know, and it helps you like step back and take a look at your own life in a kind of way.
So if I'm altogether new to the show, how many shows should I watch before I can grasp how the theory is going to be formulated?
I'm not sure, but I feel like shows like Seinfeld can be appreciated by people who haven't watched TV before and people who have. And I think that, in a way, that like it's one of those shows that can get better after having watched, like if you're an avid TV watcher, like if you grew up watching TV, I feel like Seinfeld is one of those shows that you could appreciate more as a person who grew up like that.
Well, I'm in terrible fear for the guy who has to prepare a script for this every night or whenever it comes about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it would be nearly impossible to keep on writing about nothing, and then say that ultimately this will lead to something which will be worse than nothing.
Yeah, a lot of less Seinfeld, though.
Although, like, sometimes people who end up writing about sort of existentialist philosophy, or like, you know what I mean, or like a show about nothing, they don't generally intend to. It just sort of happens, and that's kind of like their humor and their thought process, and it goes into their creative, how they work creatively. Yeah.
Creighton, you have a question?
So much that you came up with, you went and researched the backstory, or did you notice the trend of nothing across TV shows like Community or like The Office and bring it into its origin point of Seinfeld?
It kind of was both in a way. I mean, I really like Seinfeld, and I really like Community and Office and stuff like that, so I kind of wanted to look into like the basis of like that kind of thought, you know.
Thank you, Callum. Oh, I'm sorry.
One more if you don't mind, and Heather's not here yet, so we'll prolong Callum's
She's actually
thing.
standing
Oh, she is,
She's-
okay.
all right.
I didn't see her.
No, go right ahead.
All right. Just curious, because I know there was some overlap in the seasons. Any thoughts on Seinfeld and Friends? Again, basic ensemble comedies.
I really like Seinfeld, and I never really liked Friends. For some reason. I mean, it might just be personal preference, but I think it's the character. I feel like it's the characters for me. Seinfeld characters are a little bit more like they're more absurd, but they're more endearing in that kind of way.
Okay.
More endearing. Well said. Good, thank you,
Thanks.
Callum.